Faye Nicole. She had strawberry blonde hair, which was really cute. And she had huge hands, which was so funny because she was just this tiny little peanut. And, I have pretty big hands, so I always thought that she got those from me.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Katlyn, thank you for coming on, and we're excited to hear more about Faye. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what your family looks like right now, and also maybe when the time that Faye was born.
So my husband Taylor and we actually met in college. We both went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and we got married in June of 2016, so almost 6 years ago. And Faye was our first pregnancy. And now we also have a son named Kellen, who's 9.5 months old, and we have a golden retriever. She's like 4. Yeah, 4.
That's awesome. And where do you guys currently live in? In what area are you guys at right now?
We live like around 30 miles north of Milwaukee in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And we've been here for almost 5 years. We've owned our house here.
Wonderful. And is family nearby in Wisconsin then?
Yeah. We're both from Wisconsin. My parents are probably like 40-ish minutes away from where we live.
Oh, that's nice.
And his parents are, a little over an hour, so it's not too far.
Yeah, that's nice having family close-ish, right?
Right.
So you can hang out with them when you need to. Wonderful. And at the time of this recording, can you tell me when Faye was, about how long ago Faye was born?
She was born on November 7th, 2019.
That's, it just is, it's amazing how time flies by, isn't it? But thank you so much.
It is like sometimes just so incredible to think about how that was over 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. And okay, well, thank you so much for sharing about that. And so Faye was your first pregnancy. Was that part of the plan of how did your pregnancy go? Did you guys have any fertility issues? Were you planning on getting pregnant?
So no, we didn't have any fertility issues. We were planning on getting pregnant, so she was very much planned. We got pregnant with her pretty quickly. I would say probably like, maybe the second or third month of like trying. And the pregnancy went well. I mean, I had morning sickness. I was pretty sick until about like into the second trimester, like 18-ish weeks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We had actually taken a trip to Belgium at that time.
Oh, fun.
And I think like the first day we were there when we had first arrived was like the last time that I really felt sick. So thankfully I was able to enjoy the trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, after, like right then is when kind of like my energy levels really like went up. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah, very, otherwise very healthy, normal pregnancy. I was very active. Like I had been going to a gym for a while and I kept up with that on a regular basis, obviously backing off, but, and I take my dog for walks regularly. So.
Yeah, you were healthy and active and
Yep.
all of the things that you needed to do. So when you went to doctor's appointments, so actually you were pregnant pre-pandemic. I know that sounds kind of funny, but it has completely changed how visits happen and everything. So as you've gone to visits with your doctor, or were you seeing a regular OBGYN? Were you seeing a midwife? Were you seeing a PA or anything like that? How was your care How did that look for you?
I was seeing just a regular OBGYN,
Mhm.
and I had actually, like, they had this app that we could sign up for through their doctor's office, where we would monitor our, like, not heart rate, our blood pressure and our weight every week. And,
Oh,
like, they sent us a kit, and we would do that and enter it into this app, and the doctor could see it kind of remotely.
yeah.
So in the earlier days, I only had to go like every 6 weeks instead of every 4.
Right. Okay.
Which I was like all for that, right? Because I was like, oh, just, let them do their thing. Like, I don't need to be going to the doctor all the time that, in the early stages. So I did that. I had like great blood pressures, and like weight gain was right where it needed to be every time. So I was very like, tracking things, I
Yeah.
guess, health wise. So
Good. Good. Well, that's kind of nice that your doctor's office
yeah,
had kind of that option. Um,
yeah.
that's because unfortunately or fortunately, like there's a lot of telemedicine happening right now. So that's great. Um, tell me, did you have a kind of an early scan or anything like that, an early ultrasound or anything? Or did you have just the ultrasound at, say, the anatomy scan at around, 18 to 22 weeks or whatever that is?
I had a total of 2 ultrasounds with
Mhm.
her. I had an early one at, I think it was around 9 weeks. Like, they do it somewhere between 8 and 10 weeks, like
Mhm.
the dating scan, which everything looked good there. It was, I had told them, like, when my last cycle was and that my due date would be this date, and it was right on the
Good.
date that I had told them. And then I did have, a 20-week anatomy scan as well, which everything looked, perfectly great then too. And that's when we found out that she was a girl. Um,
Was that something you guys wanted to do? And
yeah, yeah, we wanted to. I'm like such a planner, and I like really am not I don't do well with surprises. So I was like, there's no way I could keep this a surprise.
yeah.
But we kind of suspected that we were having a girl. Like, my husband was just like right from day one. He was like, yep, we're having a girl.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He was like right there. Okay.
Yep.
And I'm assuming was Taylor there with you at the 20 week scan?
Yes, yeah, he was.
Awesome. That was probably really fun to be there together, to be able to
Yeah.
see that. So, okay, so she looked good and was progressing. Was she at the right size and all that jazz?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly like them giving me percentiles, but she was, I think, pretty much average size
Okay.
at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. And then, so let's kind of talk about as the pregnancy progresses, like, how are you feeling like when you get into the third trimester?
Actually, it's really interesting because at my 20-week scan, for whatever reason, I was like so incredibly nervous.
Oh,
I don't know why. I was just like so nervous. And I actually had high blood pressure because I was so nervous for the
oh,
scan. I think I just wanted to know that everything was okay. Because you don't get ultrasounds as the Doppler at your visits.
yeah,
So, that was kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe I always would have been nervous for that anyway, but that was just kind of interesting. And I remember kind of like after that, think like looking up like what the odds are of something like bad happening after a normal scan. So that was kind of weird. But, once I got over that, it was just like fine. Like, I had great energy. I was starting to, like prepare, have baby showers, everything. I was just getting like so excited by the time third trimester rolls around.
yeah,
You kind of just think like, oh, this baby's coming home.
yeah, yeah. By that time, you're like, oh yeah, we're in the home stretch. It's totally fine.
Yeah, exactly. Home stretch.
Yeah. And so, tell me how things progressed then, as you got closer to finding out.
Yeah, so I basically had my routine 36-week checkup scheduled, which it was supposed to be on a Tuesday, and I remember having a work conflict, and I ended up rescheduling it for a Wednesday.
Okay.
So I went in on Wednesday, November 6th, and I was 36 weeks in one day. And I remember when they called me back to the exam room, and, I was kind of getting checked in and situated. They asked me like how I was doing. And, I kind of made a joke like, oh, I'm really busy and stressed with work today. I'm probably going to have high blood pressure because that's one thing I noticed when I get nervous, like my blood pressure goes up. So
Yeah.
I just kind of made a joke about it. And she was like, oh yeah, the doctor will check. Um, they ask you every time that late, like, are you feeling the baby moving? And I said, yeah, I've been, she's really active at night and in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, although like I kind of just got up today and kind of just like went about my day, kind of like rushed getting ready to go because I had so much to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I really noticed, and I was on the phone a lot. And she was like, oh yeah, that happens. We get busy. Like, I'm sure everything is great. So I did end up having high blood pressure. It wasn't crazy high, but it was like a more elevated than usual. And so when my doctor came in, she's kind of a joker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she made a joke. She's like, if you don't shape up that blood pressure, I'm going to end up having to induce you early.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was kind of funny because we were just, I actually work for the healthcare system that my doctor works for.
Really?
So she kind of knew why I was stressed out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was funny. So then she just did like the group B strep swab and asked if I wanted her to check my cervix. And I said, yeah, let's see what's going on. So she did that, and I was like half a centimeter dilated and like 70% effaced. So she said my body was starting to prepare.
Right. And you're at 36 weeks. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. She was like, yeah, it's a little something, like your body's preparing, but you're not going to like go into labor right away,
Mm-hmm.
So then after that, she, got the Doppler, and she was kind of, moving it around a lot because she wasn't able to find a heartbeat. And, she was always able to find a heartbeat immediately, like even around like 12 weeks. So I started to get really nervous. And, she kind of in one spot, she was like, I think I can hear, it faintly. But, when she said that, I was like, no, that's mine, because I started to feel my heart like pounding in my chest.
Right.
And then I knew it was like matching up with my heartbeat. So, but she wasn't worried. Like, she's like, oh, your baby's just being difficult today. I'm going to go get our little ultrasound machine. And so she left. And when she left, I just had this like extreme sense of dread. I was laying there thinking to myself, like, Katlyn, did you feel her move today? And I couldn't come up with anything. Like, I was just like, oh my, so I'm already at that point, like super worried. So she comes back in, and it's like this small ultrasound machine. That's like the transvaginal one they do at the like dating scan.
Yeah.
And so she starts that, and the screen is facing me too. And the first thing I saw on the screen was her heart. It was like a black hole in her chest. And where her heart should be beating. And then like the line for the heart rate was just flat. And I just immediately sat up and I said out loud, like, her heart's not beating. And my doctor, she was just totally silent. And I looked right at her, and she was just staring at the screen, and her eyes were like red, and she looked like she was going to cry. And like, she was like, her eyes were just wide open. She was like frozen. And like, I don't remember what she said after that. I think it was something about like, she needed to get me in for a real ultrasound, because this was not, like, she doesn't do ultrasounds. This is not like the machine they should be using. But at that point, I looked her. in the eyes and I said, "You're worried, aren't you?" And then she just said to me, "Yeah, I don't want to lie to you. I'm worried." And then after that, it was just like pure chaos. Like there were nurses coming in and out. They asked me to call Taylor right away, which is obviously not a good sign.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a hold of him because I knew he was in a meeting, and I was alone because I had told him like he didn't need to come to this routine appointment. And I knew he had a meeting and stuff. So
Had he been going to some of your previous appointments, just regular doctor's
yeah,
appointments? Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, he tried to go to most of them,
Okay.
but this was one of those situations too where I had rescheduled it, and I
Oh,
had rescheduled it to a time when he couldn't go.
gotcha.
So I
Okay.
was like, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." So then I called my mom, and she answered, and I was like, just really trying to keep it together. And I just said, "Mom, I'm at the doctor's office and they can't find a heartbeat. Like, I have to go in for an ultrasound." And she, of course, was just like, "I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I'm leaving now," basically, and just hung up.
Yeah.
And then Taylor called me back, or I might have texted him too and said, "You need to call me like now." And he did call me back shortly after I talked to my mom. And, I said the same thing, like, they can't find a heartbeat. I have to go into an ultrasound. And of course, he was just like, "I'm on my way. I'm on my way." Like, they both reacted exactly the same.
Yeah.
So then the nurse, she walked me down to radiology for an ultrasound. So they actually walked me down a back hallway for privacy, because, they don't want to be escorting a heavily pregnant, bawling woman down the hall and like have everybody staring at me. So thankful for that. And at that point, I think I knew Faye was gone. It just hadn't really registered with me yet.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like autopilot, like almost like out of body
Yeah.
experience.
You're in shock. Like it's
Yeah,
so crazy.
it's just like you just survival mode. So we get to the ultrasound room and, I lay down, and of course they, the tech like had the screen not facing me, which is also not a good sign. And the nurse was in there with me. She was standing right there with me. She was actually like clutching my phone, waiting for my mom or Taylor to call to tell that they had gotten there. And so it felt like it took forever and it was horrible. Like all I could hear the whole time was like the click, click, click of the ultrasound. And then obviously like my own sniffling because I was just crying. And when the ultrasound was finally over, the tech kind of looked at the nurse and left the room. And
Didn't say anything to you, of course, or showed you the screen or
no, and
anything.
she was like so young. Like, I don't even know. I mean, she seemed sweet. So I'm just kind of thinking like for protocol, like they just she just wasn't supposed to really say anything to
Okay.
me. And so the nurse, she just looks at me and she grabs my hands and she said, "Katlyn, I'm so sorry. They didn't find a heartbeat." And I just broke down and she just hugged me. And I was just asking, like, how could this happen? And she was like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Like, all she could say was that she was so sorry. And I don't know, I think we were like that for several minutes probably. And then eventually she took me back to the exam room. And I think, it was pretty soon after that my mom arrived. And when my mom later told me that this same nurse like went out to get her in the waiting room, and she was like, she could not keep it together. That her eye was like twitching because she was just so much distress too.
Oh.
I love that nurse. She had just had a baby too, like 6 months before
Oh,
Faye. So
yeah.
yeah. Um, and my mom comes in, and then I was just like, Mom, I lost the baby. And then I just kind of like collapsed and sobbed, like this just, I don't even, you can't even comprehend. Like, it's just like your whole body,
Yeah.
this primal reaction that you don't even know you have in you. And she just hugged me, and she just kept saying she was so sorry. And, you know, I think Taylor arrived pretty quickly after that too. Um, and it was the same thing. He came in, and I just said, I lost I lost our baby. And, we just sobbed together. And I know my dad came. I don't know when. I mean, this is all when like the order of things in time just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
But I know my dad came. I don't think I saw him until like after I was all done, but he must have been out in the waiting room or something. But he had been crying too, and he was the one that had to call my siblings and tell them. And so at some point my OB had to come in and talk to us about next steps. And I knew, because I first of all, I work in the medical field, so
Mhm.
I'm a little bit more like knowledgeable, I guess, on that side of things. But I had also seen like a stillbirth in a show years ago,
Yeah.
and it really stuck with me because it was so upsetting.
Yeah.
And so I knew what I was dealing with. I knew I was going to have to give birth and like be induced and everything. So it wasn't a surprise to me, like when she kind of came in to talk about our options. One was that we could go home for the night, if we weren't ready to go to the hospital, and that we could go in the morning and be induced then, and that she would be there that next morning.
Okay.
Or, we could just go right away that night. And I just said, like, in a not as nice way, like, why would I want to go home? Like, I just want to get this over with. Like, I didn't want to have a dead baby inside of me. Like, what am I supposed to do at home?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, I just was like, why would I want to go home? Let's just over with. And I did kind of beg her for a C-section, because I didn't want to push her out,
Yeah.
which I've had a C-section now, and I know that that would be equally horrible.
Yeah.
But I think I was just thinking, like, can you put me to sleep or something?
Yeah. Let's get this
Um,
over with. Yeah. That's
because
exactly what you
yeah,
feel.
because I knew that I was going to be, silent, that she wasn't going to cry, and I just couldn't handle the idea of that. But she said no, like, not with the longer recovery. And I know she had asked me like if I would want an epidural, and I said, yeah, I don't want to feel anything. Um, so by the time we left the clinic, it was dark out because I had been there for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours.
Oh,
So it was closing.
yeah.
And I just remember it was snowing, and I'm in Wisconsin, so it's not unheard of to have snow that early in the year,
Hmm.
but like it's not typical. So it's something that I remembered. It was like that big fluffy snowflakes that just fall really slowly. And when I see it now, I think of Faye. Um, so we went home quickly, which it was only like 10 minutes from the clinic, because I didn't have a hospital bag packed yet for her. That was one of the last, few things that I hadn't done yet.
Right.
And so at that point I was just like, it doesn't matter what I pack. Like, I just kind of shoved a few things at Taylor because he was packing a bag for both of us. And I didn't grab anything for Faye because, I knew we wouldn't be bringing her home. I didn't think she would need anything. Um, and while Taylor was, packing up our stuff, I just like collapsed on the kitchen floor again. and was just sobbing. And I was just asking, like, what did I do wrong to cause this? And that, it was all my fault because I was supposed to keep her safe and I couldn't. And my parents, they were just, holding me and telling me it wasn't my fault and that I did everything right. And I know, like, at one point, my dad just, like, went outside and shoveled our driveway because he just had to, like, do something.
Yeah.
And so, and I know Taylor called my coworker, who's also a really close friend, just to, like, tell her that, I was out of work, basically. And I know after the fact, she told me, like, she had answered the phone really chipper, like, "Hey, Katlyn." And she's like, and then when I heard Taylor's voice, I knew it wasn't good. So we eventually left for the hospital. Taylor and I drove, and it snowed the entire way there. So it was like, it took forever. It was just a silent, horrible drive. And normally we're like 40 minutes from the hospital.
Yeah.
So it's already not like a very quick drive, but, and I think my parents stayed behind at our house because, they were, kind of getting our dog settled in. So we arrived at the hospital. My doctor had called them and, obviously notified them that we were coming. So we checked into labor and delivery, and, a nurse kind of met us out front and brought us to our room, which was 416. And from there, it was just a lot of like poking and prodding.
Yeah.
I know that I got hooked up to like the contraction monitor and had a bunch of blood work, collected, and got hooked up to my Pitocin IV.
Yeah.
And I know they checked my cervix, which hadn't really changed since my appointment earlier that day.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember, like, during all this, my legs were like shaking uncontrollably. It was strange. I've never had that before, but I'm pretty sure now it was just severe anxiety.
Yeah.
While I was having all of that done, Taylor, I think, stepped out to call his parents, to tell them the news and that they could come in the morning.
Oh, okay.
But because they were, an hour away, but they decided to jump in the car and come right away.
Mm.
Because it was like 8 p.m., I think, around 8 o'clock. So we didn't expect them to come that night, but they did. And there was an on-call OB that came in and talked to us for a while. She was so nice and sweet.
Oh, good.
She had been suspicious of a placental abruption because I think the reasoning was because I was having a lot of contractions, actually.
Already?
But I didn't really notice them.
Oh, really?
Like, I was having them often, but I didn't really notice them. And so I don't know, apparently that might be like something with placental abruption that causes like you not to feel contractions. I know some, like, she had said some abruptions are like not, they're like, you don't notice them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of times, like, there's pain and like blood, but not always.
Gotcha.
So that was something she was suspicious of. So she wanted to check, to break my water to check the amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
And that would also help, speed things along with labor.
Mm-hmm.
So
because you had the contraction monitor and you were contracting quite a bit and you were not like, feeling it
constantly. Yeah, like I didn't notice. I mean, and eventually, like, when I was watching it and they were getting stronger, I kind of noticed it because I could like see them.
Yeah.
But
if you didn't know, if you weren't watching
if I didn't know, I mean, I had some, Braxton Hicks contractions and stuff, but like nothing painful. Like, it wasn't painful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So she was kind of suspicious of that. And so she broke my water and it was, totally clear and normal looking. I think she was also looking for meconium.
Oh, okay.
So then I did start having stronger contractions after that, but I didn't want the epidural yet because I didn't, want to have to be like in bed the whole time. I
Mhm.
wanted to be like moving around. So I was just like bouncing on, the labor ball.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then at that point, I think all of our parents were there. Taylor had gone with his dad to go get food because neither of us had eaten anything
Oh, yeah.
since like lunchtime. So my mom and Taylor's mom stayed in the room with me. And I just remember like at that point I kind of calmed down a bit and I was actually like, able to like joke and laugh. Like I was laughing about like my fluid getting all over the floor. I don't know, just whatever. I don't know why I was able to calm down, but I just was. And I know I talked to my sister on the phone for a little bit, but
Mm.
I really don't even remember much about it,
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite late now, right? Like everybody's
Yeah,
hanging out
it's
in your
late.
room.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say it's been a few hours. So like at one point I decided to just kind of go walk the halls and the nurse was like, yeah, that could help speed things along. Um and so my mom, walked around the halls with me because my labor wasn't, really progressing, but I didn't
Mhm.
want the epidural. And the nurse did tell me not to walk down certain hallways. Um, because I could hear crying babies and like see their pictures on the doors.
Yeah.
And I didn't listen to her. I ended up going down all the hallways anyway, because I just didn't want to walk down my same hallway. And that was when I really realized that um, they had me in a hallway by myself because, they didn't want me to hear the other babies, which I am thankful for because that would, I have heard so many stories where families had to listen to that and it's just horribly upsetting, but it was also just like it made me feel so alone
Yeah. Yep.
because I could see the other baby's pictures on the door and then mine had, the leaf with the teardrop.
Yeah.
And so at that point it was really late, like probably 12:30 or 1 a.m. when
Mm.
I got back to my room. And I was so exhausted that I wanted to try to rest.
Yeah.
And my nurse did tell me, if you get the epidural now, it'll really help you relax. So I just said, okay, fine, whatever, I'll get it now. And, it's pretty late. So it didn't take the anesthesiologist very long to get there.
Yeah.
Um, and so I did get the epidural at that point, which ended up not really working on one side. So I
Oh,
couldn't rest anyway,
oh, darn it.
as much as I tried. Yeah. I think I kind of dozed off for like maybe 5-10 minutes, but it was just like the contractions kept getting really strong and they were on like one side. I could feel it all.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, they even tried to like flip me over onto my left side to try to get the medication and
To go down that
it
direction
didn't
and it
work.
didn't work. Dang it.
No. So yeah, but it was very quickly after that I felt the urge to push. And so we called the nurse in and I was like, I swear like my body is pushing. Like I feel that urge.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, well, let me check you. And I was at 10 centimeters dilated.
You were there.
So it was very fast after that. So I just remember she was kind of getting me into position and, getting me ready. And I remember she had Taylor helping with like my legs and stuff. And I just remember grabbing his arm and I looked at him and I was like, I went through an entire pregnancy and we don't get to bring our baby home. Like, it was just like that realization of like, I'm about to give birth. And before I started pushing, because they were waiting for the doctor to get there, she had asked me if I would want them to put my baby on my chest when she came out, like they do with, live births. And I said, yes, that I wanted them to do that. And so I started pushing and it was fast. Like, I think I only pushed for about a half hour. I
Oh,
was like so determined.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, I was so determined to get it over with. Like,
Yeah.
um, so I think it was only a half hour before, Faye was born at 3 a.m. And then at one point she actually told me to stop because I had pushed her head out and the doctor wasn't ready yet.
Oh,
I was like, I don't know why they always say that to people. Like, that's
I
very
need,
hard to do.
yeah, you're like, I need to push.
Um, so then, she put her on my chest like, right away, wrapped her up in a blanket and put her on my chest. And I didn't look down at her right away because I was like afraid. And um I was just sobbing and Taylor was sobbing and I looked down at her and I just said, "She is so beautiful. Like she just looks like she's sleeping." And Taylor said, "She looks just like you." And she was just so perfect and beautiful. Um and then everybody in the room was crying, like the nurses, the doctor, everybody. Like that's what's so cruel about stillbirth is it's like so silent and all you really hear is like your own sobbing. But I know the nurse asked, you know, if she had a name and I just looked at Taylor and he nodded at me and I said Faye Nicole. And then I think after I delivered the placenta, the nurse and doctor were like examining everything really closely and I heard them say like, "Oh yeah, right there."
Oh,
And it was a section of her umbilical cord that was like it was like kinked, like pinched.
oh, okay. Not a
And
knot. It was just pinched.
yeah, it wasn't a knot, it was like pinched, kind of like if you like the best, I guess, analogy that I have to describe it is like a garden hose.
Mm,
When you kink that and the water doesn't come out,
yeah.
that's kind of what it looked like.
Oh,
I mean, I know I looked. I don't remember it. I think I kind of blocked that out of my memory, but I know at the time I looked and I remember seeing it and I know Taylor remembers it.
oh, okay.
But the doctor was pretty confident that that was the cause of her death. So she did talk to us about autopsy, but at that point I was just like I couldn't stand the thought of having an autopsy done. Like I just couldn't imagine that anybody cutting up my little, girl. I mean, I kind of sometimes now feel like I should have done that, but it was just the decision that was right for us at the time.
Yeah.
So then our nurse, she went out. Our parents were all in the waiting room. There was like a family waiting room. So the nurse went out to get our parents, and I know my mom told me that the nurse just lost it too. And she told them, it was a cord accident and that they could all come in and see her. So everybody came in, gave me hugs, and we, let them take turns holding her. My mom held her, and then my mother-in-law held her, and then my dad held her for a little while. I know he wasn't sure if he could do it, and then my father-in-law he couldn't do it. He looked at her, but he couldn't hold her.
Yeah.
And then, it was starting to get light out at this point. So they all said their goodbyes and I tried to actually get some sleep for a little while. And when I woke up, I wanted my mom to come back. So Taylor, texted her to tell her to come back later in the morning. And my dad came back at some point, and then my brother came for a little while, which he's actually the only one of our siblings that got to meet Faye.
Oh,
My
really?
older sister is out in Portland, Oregon, so
Mm,
she's not very close.
yeah.
And Taylor's brother is in Chicago, so he's not that close either.
Right.
So, at the time, we didn't really think to ask people to come see her. None of our friends really even knew at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even think about that. But, Taylor and I, we spent that whole day taking turns holding her and talking to her and just admiring how beautiful she was. And, I kept telling her that I was so sorry that I couldn't keep her safe. And I know when my mom came, she held her a lot too, because I was just trying to rest on and off during the day. And I know the nurses, asked me if we wanted to have a photographer come and take pictures of her, a professional photographer that volunteered. And I'm so grateful for that because I never would have known or thought about doing the pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I only have a couple pictures of her that were taken on our phones. And so, that's one thing, because I know the professional photographer photos, they're in black and white, but they're incredibly beautiful. But I do wish I had a little bit, more photos in color.
Yeah.
But the photographer, she was just so sweet and so good with her, and just made her gave her a sweet little headband. And
Oh, yeah.
so I'm really glad that we have those. And then, my doctor was there that day. So she actually was kind of surprised that she didn't deliver her. She didn't think that I would
Go so
deliver
quickly.
her overnight,
Yeah. Okay.
because my induction actually went pretty quickly,
Mm-hmm.
which, she did say, for your sake, I'm glad that it went quickly, because that's just another just horrible thing about it, is having to be in labor for so long.
Yeah.
So they, she said we could stay another night and have her with us. They never took her out of the room, really.
Mm-hmm.
She was just in the bassinet in our room the whole time, which that's the way that hospital does things with the living babies too. They really don't have a nursery.
Okay.
They have a nursery, but it's not really a nursery. It's where they take them to do the weights and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, yeah. So, she did say that we could stay with her another night, but I just wanted to get out of there.
Yeah. Were you feeling okay?
And
Were you feeling okay after the birth?
yeah, physically,
Yeah, physically. Okay.
I was fine. It was pretty physically not a complicated
Okay.
labor. And who knows? I mean, I was in so much emotional pain that I just
Right.
couldn't really comprehend physical pain anyway.
Right. Right.
But it was it was not complicated. So, she said we could go home. She would feel comfortable letting me go home. But we could also stay, because that's, protocol is to stay a couple nights. So I couldn't stand to see, Faye deteriorate at that point. She was just so perfect when she was born. But they didn't have a cuddle cot or anything.
Mm.
And so she did start to get, a little more, cold and purple, and that her nose started to bleed a little bit.
Yeah.
And I am an idiot, and I never thought about my motherly instinct was just to wrap her up in her blankie and cuddle her and keep her warm.
Yeah.
But that makes things worse. I'm an idiot. I should have known that, but I just didn't think about that.
No, but it's your motherly instincts that have kicked in. I mean, like you said,
Yeah.
you want to keep them safe and warm and
Yeah.
cozy, and why wouldn't you do that? I think you're perfectly fine doing that.
Yeah. So, so I couldn't, it was just time. And, it was the right distance at the time to go home then. So I was with her probably, 14, 16 hours. I mean, between when she was born and when we got discharged. But, saying goodbye was the worst day of my life. It was just so hard. And the nurses, they were all incredible, and they were so sweet. And they did take her into the, nursery that's not really a nursery. And they just, said, we'll keep her in here with us, and we're going to take good care of her. And I know that I had talked to the funeral home, that day too, and they were coming to get her that night, so I knew she didn't have to, like, it was just kind of comforting to know that somebody was coming to get her.
Yeah.
Um, so then I just remember when we got home, we just sat in her room and cried together. Yeah, I know. I Taylor went in there and I was just like, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" But then I just joined him, like, everything was ready.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there were a few things that I hadn't done yet, like, put a car seat in the car,
Yeah.
and I didn't have, like, a bassinet in our room set up yet. I was waiting to do that at 37 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, so it's going home is the worst without your baby.
It is the worst. It's just, like, it doesn't even feel like real life.
Yeah. So you guys had you had Faye go to the funeral home, get picked up by the funeral home. And so what decisions did you guys make about a funeral, or if she was being buried, or if she was, how did that look for you guys?
Yeah, we decided to have her cremated, um, because we just don't know where we're gonna be
Mm,
forever.
mhm.
Where we live now is not where we're from. So we didn't know, and we wanted to have her close. So
Right.
we didn't really know, where we would bury her.
Mhm.
So we decided to cremate her, and then that way we would just, have her with us always. We did not do a funeral. I just could not comprehend doing a funeral at the time. I didn't think that I would be able to make it through something like that.
Yeah.
So again, that was just like the right decision for us. So we didn't really do like a funeral or
Mhm.
a memorial or anything. I'm actually not very religious at all, but I did have her blessed
Mhm.
by the chaplain at the hospital, which was really beautiful. And I'm really glad we did that. And I had a close friend. She made like thank you memorial cards
Oh.
with some of our, pictures of her on it. And we sent those out to, all the people that brought us meals or
Mm.
sent us like gift cards, money, all of that stuff. Anybody that sent us something, physically, we sent those thank you cards to memorial cards. So that's pretty much really all we did as far as um I I have a lot of things like in memory of her. Like I
Mhm.
have a lot of, jewelry. I remember like who got me each and every single piece. Like
Yeah.
I remember all of that. I have a ring actually that I wear with my wedding ring that has some of her ashes in it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I, I had a custom urn made for her
Mhm.
from someone I found on Etsy, and she was just like so sweet and amazing. So she has like it's like pottery and it has her name on it and
Oh.
pink mums because mums are the November birth flower. So that's really sweet. And then like one of the biggest things I did, that spring after was we were doing landscaping at our house and I made like one section is like her memorial garden.
That's
So
that's so
um
sweet.
yeah, it's like my favorite and I just loved it. It was so healing to do that.
Good.
So
That's wonderful. Caitlin, I always love to know the meaning behind names. So, how did Faye get her name? It sounded like you guys had talked about it, and you kind of knew that that was going to be her name when you just looked at each other when when the nurse asked what her name was going to be. So, tell me a little bit about how you guys chose her name.
yeah, so we had been, after 20 weeks when we found out we were having a girl, we had, started thinking about names and I never had like a name picked out for a daughter and Taylor didn't either.
Mm.
So we kind of just like, we got one of these apps that it's like, I don't know, it's like Tinder or something where you like swipe for names.
Oh.
And then like if you match with your partner, then like it notifies you or something. So we actually never matched on any of them because he never even used it. And he's the one that told me about it. But like most of the names on there were like really kind of silly, weird names. But like I did see Faye come up on there and I was like, I've heard of that name. Like that's pretty.
Yeah.
And I know it's like, it's very, very old.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not something that I had ever planned on naming my daughter, but it just like popped up. And we had a lot of other options too. And like a few of them we agreed on. So we never, like, that was like the one where I remember giving him my list of names and saying like, okay, you're going to laugh at this one. And he was like, oh, what is it? I was like, Faye. And he was like, oh, I like that one.
Pleasantly
so
surprised.
I was like, oh, wow, I'm really surprised. And so, it was just, that was kind of like the front runner.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nicole is my sister's name.
Oh.
So that, I thought that they sounded really pretty together.
Yes, totally. It's got a good rhythm to it. Yeah, it does sound pretty.
Yeah. So, we weren't totally set on it, but it was the front runner. So that's why, like, I kind of looked at him, after, she was born and he nodded, and that's why, we knew. So yeah.
That's so fun. It's beautiful. It's a really beautiful name. And I love to know, how big was she? Because she was 36 weeks, so she probably was a good little size.
Yeah, she was 5 pounds, 2 ounces.
Mm-hmm.
So she was kind of on the smaller side for 36 weeks, I think, but she didn't seem that small. Like she seemed like a full-term baby,
That's great.
I mean, I was only a few days away from really being full term. So
yeah, that's so cool. And you did mention before that you had seen and didn't really want to do any sort of autopsy. And so did your doctor eventually basically rule it being an umbilical cord accident then?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they said it was probable. Because I think that you need to be a definitive diagnosis. I think that you need some kind of like pathology, which I know they did look at the placenta, but there was nothing really definitive on there. When I had met with a maternal fetal medicine specialist, they were the ones that told me that cord accidents, can be diagnosed with really specific pathology, and that a lot of pathologists aren't actually trained to do that.
Oh.
So, that's something that I've thought about, is having to look at my slides for a second opinion. It's just,
so you did have some samples.
Yeah, they did. I think they were really just looking for infection in the placenta.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I don't even know if they if they were really looking for that. I think that the OB just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything there was like no infection going on.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there wasn't. So yeah, I've thought about getting like a second opinion on the cord accident. I just don't really know if that will help give me closure. I mean, nothing's going to bring her back.
No.
So
yeah,
I don't know. So
yeah. It's always tricky that the decision about the autopsy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
actually work, like, I used to work in the lab.
Oh.
And at the hospital I worked at, they did do autopsies, for the babies. And, I know that they're incredibly sensitive about it. I just still couldn't, handle having, where is she? And like, what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I just couldn't,
Didn't want to, put her through that, and that's fine. I have really enjoyed hearing about Faye, and I'm so sorry. It is so hard to listen to because it feels so similar to ours, and it's just so shocking and so difficult. So thank you so much for taking the time and telling us about her. Would you like to tell us anything else that you want to remember about her? or anything about the day or anything that we may have missed?
I guess I would just want to say that, her life matters. And yes, like losing her has been painful and traumatic, but it's not what defines her. I do want to look back on my good memories of her and kind of keep her memory alive, that she made me a mom. And I love her and I will think about her, every day for the rest of my life.
That's perfect. Thank you so much again, Katlyn.
Yes, thank you for having me.